What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Another fantastic Radio Row edition of Next Pats coming at you. We've got Drake Maye. We're able to catch up with him at the Battle of the Paddles in New Orleans during the week. He ends up not only entering and playing against Micah Parsons, Kirk Cousins, and beating those guys, but he wins the whole thing. He wins the belt. So congratulations to him. I'm sure it means very much to him. It was pretty funny. Get to see the competitive juices flow a little bit for Drake Maye, especially when he was going against Micah Parsons. A lot of trash talk there, but it was great to talk to him after the fact. And we cover a variety of topics, including why it might be good for this team and for himself to get some hard coaching from Mike Vrabel and also from Josh McDaniels, and just how beneficial it is for Drake Maye to be able to go back into the archives and watch some old Patriots Tom Brady tape. Tom Brady running the Josh McDaniels offense because, remember, by rule, only so much communication that can happen right now between players and coaches. And so for Drake Maye to maybe get a little bit of a head start on what will be his education from Josh McDaniels, learning a new offense, learning, I'm sure, in some ways, a little bit of a new language. He's going to be able to hit the ground running, perhaps, to a degree, because he has all of this stuff at his fingertips that he can watch, that he can go through right now before really getting into the weeds with Josh McDaniels. So Drake Maye was great. We covered a variety of topics. You're going to love that conversation. Without me continuing to yammer on here, let's get right to that chat with Drake Maye. We'll come back, and then we have another conversation with Steve Palazzolo about how to surround Drake Maye with some talent. Very happy now to have with us Patriots quarterback Drake Maye. Drake, Battle of the Paddles champion here 2 times over, both in the doubles and in the singles. Good to get the competitive juices flowing out here.
Yeah, good to get it going. I think, I like my chances coming into the night. Play a little growing up with my brothers, and we play a little bit at the facility, not much. We do get back there on some off days and Fridays. So good chance to come out here, meet some guys, and have fun.
You're going to have a new head coach this coming season. Maybe you'll be able to play a little ping pong against him at the facility, but there's plenty of work to be done between now and the start of the season. It sounds like you've had a chance to talk to Mike Vrabel. Why do you feel like this might be a nice hire for your team? Why is he the right guy for this group moving forward?
Yeah, I think we're really excited about Coach. Coach Vrabel, he's played in New England, knows what it's like to have success in for the Patriots and for that team, and been a head coach somewhere else. So he's kind of been out of the system and seen different things. So excited to get him back going, and I think he's really excited. So I think the guys are going to be pumped up.
He's known as somebody, Drake, who does a little bit of hard coaching. Yeah. That's just sort of his style. Is there anything about that maybe excites you to get that style of coaching into the building?
Yeah, I think, for me as a player, especially as a quarterback, you want that. You like that. You want to be coached hard. We're playing at the highest level, but we still need to be coached hard. I think that's the biggest thing people get away from. We don't know everything. Especially me coming in second year, just finished my rookie season. I don't know everything and want to be coached hard. I know Coach McDaniels will get that done, but Coach Vrabel, I think, and some of our guys, including me, we probably need that, a little hard coaching.
You mentioned Josh McDaniels. Have you had a chance yet to be in touch with him? And do you think it'll be a challenge for you, or how much of a challenge will it be to change offenses going into year 2?
No doubt. Yeah, you learn a new offense. I think obviously I think I'm a bright kid, and I don't think we'll be too challenging. But obviously, I think it's a new offense. You got to do it, and they don't give you much time to work with coaches. During this time period, you got to have time off. So it's fortunate, like I said, you got the whole library from years ago back when the greatest to ever did it in the same offense. So what a guy to watch film on, and Coach McDaniels has been one of the best in the business as a coordinator, and looking forward to running the offense that Tom Brady did.
It's early in the offseason, I know, but have you had a chance already to look at some of that stuff that you're talking about that's in the database there for the team?
Yeah, I found myself last season seeing, hey, what did Tom Brady look like in 7-on-7, or what did Tom Brady look like in quarterback individual? So you find yourself flipping through the database and pulling up Tom, obviously, because it's what a cool thing to have film on Tom back in the day. So I found myself him throwing to Gronk in 7-on-7, so it's pretty cool.
You're fresh off the Pro Bowl. You told our friend Kay Adams the other day that maybe you're doing a little bit of recruiting, talking to the guys about the area. Free agency's upcoming. It's going to be big in terms of roster building for the Patriots this offseason. How do you try to encourage players to come to the Northeast and come to Foxborough? Because especially lately, Drake, it hasn't been necessarily a place that guys are dying to come play.
Yeah, I think obviously since the dynasty's been over, and we're trying to get back there. So I think it's a huge thing. I think the number one thing is selling the city, selling the fans. They love you, and when we're winning, which we need to do, they're behind our back, and I think we got something to look forward to in Boston.
However the team looks, is there one area of your game that you're looking to really improve on before we let you go?
Protecting football, situational football, and just keep on being a leader.
Drake, thanks so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. You can hear the excitement in his voice when he's talking about Mike Vrabel, when he's talking about Josh McDaniels, when he's talking about running that offense that Tom Brady was able to run and have such a fantastic career in running. And so for Drake Maye, it feels like a lot of excitement, a lot of optimism to be able to work with the coaches that he's going to work with, to be able to work in the system that he's going to work with. But he understands as well as anybody that this team could probably use a little bit more prodding, a little bit more hard coaching. And I thought those were really great insights from the second-year quarterback. Now let's talk about how the Patriots can build around him, shall we? Steve Palazzolo from the 33rd Team and from the Check the Mic podcast, one of the smartest guys in the industry. He's actually doing some consulting for NFL clubs as well as college clubs right now when it comes to their personnel evaluations. And so always a fantastic person for us to chat with. We're talking draft. We're talking adding through the trenches versus adding with some weapons. The Patriots should be able to do both this offseason. Let's be honest, given the resources at their disposal, but really interesting to hear Steve's ideas on what their priorities should be. So let's get to that conversation with Steve Palazzolo right here, right now. All right, very excited now to have with us on the Next Pats podcast, Steve Palazzolo of the 33rd Team, Check the Mic podcast, also doing some player evaluation consulting for both the NFL and college football programs. Steve, thanks for being with us, man.
Thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure to meet here on Media Row down at the Super Bowl.
It is a very good time here in New Orleans. I've never been to New Orleans before, Steve, and I've only been here for about 48 hours now. I'm having a lot of fun. I've eaten a lot of food. I think I've gained 10 pounds since I've been here. But that's okay. That's what you're supposed to do.
That's what the week's for.
Right? That's what the week's for. I love picking your brain on all things team building, player evaluation. I want to ask you first, should Patriots fans be at all nervous having a roster in New England that needs as much improvement as it does with Mike Vrabel at the head of it? Because it feels like between Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, who's now in the mix, Elliott Wolf, who's in the mix, it does sort of feel like Vrabel's operation. And it feels like he might have final say on the roster. And yet, his rosters weren't great in Tennessee. And so I put it to you as somebody who has studied the league at large. Is that something that should give fans some pause?
So I think a part of when Tennessee fell apart, though, it did feel like Vrabel was not in on, say, the A.J. Brown trade. That was like the biggest bad move that Tennessee made, was losing an absolute superstar for just a first-round pick and then not replacing him. And I think a lot of that was maybe John Robinson type of thing, and then Vrabel wins the power battle struggle over there. But I think it's always a little bit of a concern because the fact that Vrabel didn't necessarily get along with the front office there, and they need to here. And a lot of times we're seeing this around the league. A lot of teams are resetting with a new GM and a new head coach together, right? In lockstep. You guys are together, and you have this unbalanced Elliott's still here, and Vrabel's in, and you got to figure out how that's all going to work. So they do have to figure out a way to work together. And I do think evaluators, one of their challenges is not just finding good players, but players that the coaches want. And that tug, that struggle sometimes does cause issues.
What are you doing with the fourth overall pick if you're New England? I know free agency has to happen first, and they got to figure out what they're going to do there and how they're going to spend their money and fill their needs. But if the draft were today and you were the Patriots at number 4 overall, what are you doing?
I've been tempted by just Will Campbell and not as much the shiny object that is a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter if those guys are available. I've generally been that way. I can understand people not going that way. I would love to see in free agency, there's that second, third wave of free agency. You could pick up starters on the offensive line. That needs to happen regardless, But there's a big part of me that's saying trenches first, offensive line first. It is tough to pass up in Abdul Carter. I've been back and forth on him because he's only 1 year playing on the edge. He's really a linebacker conversion, but the upside is immense. And we've already seen some of it. It's not just pure upside. It's not just a guesswork. He was outstanding at Penn State last year. So right now, let's say Abdul Carter, but that is dependent on you better pick up 2 or 3 starters somewhere in free agency on that offensive line.
Well, and he would have to make it to number 4. I feel like in some places you're seeing him as maybe the best player in the draft, period. And so is there a chance he goes to Tennessee at 1, even though they're quarterback needy, right? So if he's there, that would make all kinds of sense. But you're even considering Will Campbell, even if Carter is there, which is interesting to me. It feels like the general consensus has been if Carter or Travis Hunter gets to 4, just take one of those guys because they're probably the 2 best players in the draft. But for you, there would be an argument to be made for taking the offensive lineman.
There would be, and look, the combine's coming up in a few weeks here, and they're gonna stretch his arms out, and they're going to measure his arms.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're on
This is a
YouTube watching us
35-inch
right now,
arm
if you
right
want to
here.
see some long arms, that's what Will Campbell needs. If we could only amputate Steve Palazzolo's arms and slap him onto Will Campbell, he'd be the number one
if
overall
he had
pick.
my 35-inch arms, we're not having questions. But when his arms come in at 33 or 32 plus or something, then it's going to be, oh, he's a guard. He can't go in the top 10.
Do you believe in that?
There's kernels of truth in it, but I would not. It's not like a separator, right? Will Campbell has good enough footwork, and other players are good enough technically that they can get away with it. The right tackle for Tampa Bay right now, Luke Gedeke, struggled at guard. He's under 33 inches. Struggled at guard, became a pretty good right tackle the last couple of years. You can deal with it.
Interesting.
But it's tougher to do it at 4, right? It's tougher to say, the guy at 4, you want every box to be ticked for that player. And if that box isn't ticked for a Will Campbell, then maybe he's not going top 10.
Is there something he can do to make up for that? So he goes to the combine. Say his arms are 32 and a half. By the way, Joe Thuney's playing left tackle for maybe the eventual Super Bowl champions here, as we're here on Radio Row. 32 and a quarter arms, and he's doing a pretty damn good job at left tackle.
A very good left tackle in college, too,
and an incredible athlete.
Yes.
I think he was 90th plus percentile on every agility drill, 10-yard split, all that athleticism stuff that you want to see from offensive linemen. So if Will Campbell comes in and tests like a Joe Thuney, I don't know if he's expected to do that, but can he do something along those lines to make up for that lack of length and make him a surefire top 5 guy?
That's what it would have to be, the athleticism, and then, of course, people going back to the film and saying, is the length actually an issue? The only reason why it's an issue is you have big, long defensive ends. They get their hands on you. They get their hands on your pads, and then they can control you at the line of scrimmage, both as a pass rusher and as a run defender. That's why it's an issue. So you got to go back and see, does it show up on film? And to be honest, Will Campbell he's got some bad reps on film against some pretty good SEC rushers, so he's not a slam dunk at that spot. I just don't know if I'm the Patriots, I don't know if I can go into the season without going crazy on the offensive line and overhauling that thing.
Player age matter to you? You hear things like dominator rating and things along those lines for other positions. Does it matter as much on the offensive line? Because I believe he's 21 years old. I think he showed up as a starter. Maybe he's about to turn 22. But the theory being, well, he's still a young kid. His body's going to grow and develop, and maybe his arms won't grow. But maybe he'll get stronger or more athletic, and you'll have an even better player a couple years from now.
I think it matters a little bit. I've talked to some teams who really believe in it, and you can kind of tell they always draft 20, 21-year-olds if they're available. It matters a little bit, maybe not as much as receiver. But, yes, if offensive linemen also tend to take 2 to 3 years to develop, right? And they take longer to develop generally. And so that's where, Patriots fans, patience. I probably preached patience last year to Patriots fans. Same thing, patience, right? If you do get a Will Campbell, you might not get his peak until year 3, but that's when you want Drake Maye to peak. That's when you want this roster to really be coming good over the next couple of years.
Can I ask you about Abdul Carter? Because as talented as he is, he's clearly a freak of nature out there. How many freaks of nature does Penn State produce year after year after year? It's insane. Is he somebody who you would be comfortable taking first overall, or is he as good as we're making him out to be? And the only reason I ask is he does at times look a little light. Like, I don't know if every team out there is going to look at him and say, well, that's a 3-down player as soon as he steps into the league, or if he's more of a, specialty pass rusher early in his career. Is that worthy of being taken in that spot?
I will say I don't think he's as good of a prospect, right? In the last 10 years, we've seen Myles Garrett, we've seen both Bosa's, Chase Young, who didn't really live up to the hype.
Yep.
Those are the 4 best prospects of the last 10 years off the top of my head. And then Aiden Hutchinson and Will Anderson. I would say those are the best 6 edge prospects. Again, off the top of my head, I think I might be missing one.
That was a pretty good job by you.
Right?
Yep, I can't
best
think of any others.
6 prospects of the last 10 years. They've all hit except maybe Chase Young, who battled some injuries. I don't think Abdul Carter's at that slam dunk level. And the reason is, and so Micah Parsons isn't really there because he came out as a linebacker but then became maybe the best out of all those guys. So put him aside. So people are hoping that Abdul Carter becomes Micah Parsons, right? Penn State started at linebacker, became an edge rusher. The question with Carter is he's only got 1 year playing on the edge in that position. I don't think he's probably as good in the run game as some of the others, but that's part of the intrigue is that he only has 1 year developing at that position. So he's close, but he's maybe not as – like if Will Anderson was coming out in this class, I would feel better about a Will Anderson or an Aiden Hutchinson than maybe Abdul Carter. But I still think he's worth, a top 5 pick.
I do want to ask you about one free agent in particular who you were sharing a city with. Still are, potentially. I'm not sure where the Palazzolos are these days.
Still in Cincinnati.
It's still in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Okay.
I know where you're going.
T. Higgins, $35 million a year. $33 million a year, whatever it ends up being, $110 million total, $65 million guaranteed. Is that crazy? Is that something the Patriots should even consider given where they're at, or because of where they're at and because they're really not paying anybody else and they have oodles of cap space right now, is that the perfect time for them to overpay for a guy like that?
I think it's very tempting. The supply and demand of wide receiver ones it's a tough spot right now. And do you need a wide receiver one? I mean, we've been debating this in New England for 20 years now. Do you need a one?
Feels more and more with every passing year, like you do.
We need a one.
Every year they move away from Tom Brady.
We need a stretch the field playmaker.
We
need a guy, right? And you do, to a point. I do worry about the trenches, though, right? And I know we'll talk about the Super Bowl teams in a minute and how good they are, offensive and defensive line, and that foundation that they have. I'd be okay paying T. Higgins, though. I'd be intrigued by the Cooper Kupp thing as well. Cooper Kupp being out there.
Yes.
But it's not a long-term play, right? This is Adam Thielen has been a good late career slot receiver. You know he's going to get open, smart guy, QB binky type of player. I could see Cooper Kupp being maybe that guy. So maybe that's like a nice little transition type of player while you're building the lines. Give Drake Maye some confidence and a go-to guy. Maybe it's redundant to Pop Douglas a little bit, but that's the type of player maybe I'd look at a little bit cheaper while you're building everything else if you don't go with the home run swing of T. Higgins.
So you think Cooper Kupp's got a little something left in the tank?
Enough, right? And we're not talking 2021, one of the best
Sure.
receiver seasons of all time. But if you're telling me he's going to be in the right place at the right time, he's going to be open up to 15 yards, I feel like he could be a nice addition for Drake Maye here.
What's the cost?
So you're looking at $19-20 million a year for the next couple of years.
And the pick would be.
I don't think it's high.
A third?
Yeah, it's probably
something
a third.
Along those
lines. So if they already have a lot of draft capital. If you accumulate more, continue to trade down, add more to more depth, I think you're stealing a starter, maybe. But it's a decent amount of money. But with a rookie contract quarterback, it's not crazy.
A rookie contract quarterback, and you're not paying a tackle. You're paying Micah Wenu, I guess, tackle-ish money, but you're not paying a corner. You're not paying a receiver.
Yeah.
So you have money to play with. Would make a lot of sense. I like that idea by you. Last question I wanted to ask you. Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs. You've studied these teams, obviously, quite a bit. In terms of how they've built their rosters for a team that is rebuilding like the Patriots, is there anything they can look at from afar and say, we need to try to do that, like starting now?
Yeah.
What would it be for you?
It is the trenches, man. I mean, if you look at the Eagles in particular, when I was at PFF, we would say the Eagles have a top 5 pass rush every single year. And they always reload, and they get younger, and they're 8 deep on the defensive line. And the years when they're special is when the coverage unit tends to come together, but they always have that foundation of we can rush the passer. And then Kansas City was fascinating because there was a point where I thought, hey, if they want to be the Patriots dynasty, when things fell apart for New England was like lost in the AFC Championship, right? Mm-hmm. When that happened, it was like, oh, it's because Austin Colley's the receiver. It's when the receiving core fell apart. And I thought Kansas City might need to go down that path. And they went the opposite. They said Mahomes got beaten up in the Super Bowl with a bad offensive line, never again. And they went and invested in the O-line and said and maybe sacrificed a little bit at receiver. And so I think it's the trenches, man. I think it's O-line and D-line. I am a shiny object, number one receiver type of guy at heart, but I might be changing a little bit more to say make sure that foundation in the trenches is strong on both sides of the ball.
I lied to you earlier. That wasn't my last question. Last question is Jumbo Gumbo question right here. This is something we're doing with all our guests here on Radio Row this week. Steve, you have a little ladle there. I'm going to ask you to pull out a football. The football is going to have a corresponding number, and I'm going to ask you the corresponding number question.
I'm a righty. So
with arms that are that long, you would think that you would be a little bit better at pulling from the ladle.
I'm going to eat so much gumbo
Number
this week.
42, so these are random, not football-related questions. Question number 42 is, what was your first CD/album that you owned?
Oh, man.
This is a fun one. I'll give you mine when you're done. Or I'll give you mine as you think. Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses.
I honestly don't even know. I was like late to the music scene growing up, and then I actually don't even know what.
Give us your favorite album. Do you have a favorite album, Steve? Do you just listen to NFL Films music on repeat?
Yes, I do actually. Third Eye Blind's original, 1997.
Wow, look at that. Okay.
Yeah, let's say Third Eye
1997.
Blind.
Steve Palazzolo was a boy of 14 years of age?
Something like that.
Somewhere around there?
Freshman year of high school, Third Eye Blind.
Good
that's
stuff.
the first. first and best.
All
What
right,
was yours?
all right. Well, Appetite for Destruction,
There
Guns
you
N'
go.
Roses.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I liked the cover and ended up liking the album. Look at me, hardcore rocker. Steve, thanks for being with us here, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. Thanks so much to Drake Maye. Thanks so much to Steve Palazzolo. Thank you to you all for listening, for watching. If you could, please, please, please rate, comment, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment on YouTube. Love diving into the comment section there. We are loading you up with content here from New Orleans. Had so many great podcasts already this week that are at your fingertips. We will continue to have more with great guests from here on Radio Row. Make sure you're checking out the Patriots Talk podcast as well. Some tremendous stuff there with myself, Tom Curran, and a variety of guests. We're having a great time here in New Orleans. Hopefully you're having a great time listening. We'll have another Next Pats episode for you very, very soon, so keep your eyes out, and we'll talk to you then.